Welcome to the final volume of Lord of Mysteries, The Fool. In the previous volume, Clean advanced to Sequence 1, Attendant Mission, the most completely digested the potion right after advancing, because the role associated with his identity as the world was that of the Fool's Blessed, which is equivalent to an Attendant of Mysteries. Therefore, Clean had already been acting as an Attendant of Mysteries for a long time in advance. It was precisely because of this that he suppressed the will of the Lord of Mysteries within him that sought to awaken. Even so, facing Ammon, who had already become a deity, he still found it difficult to contend with him. He had to seize the time to become Seful, relying on Sephira Castle and his own status to contend against Ammon. Here is a brief introduction to the background of the world of Lord of Mysteries. The original creator split into the Lord of Mysteries and God Almighty. The Lord of Mysteries controlled Sephira Castle and the unique weaknesses of the Fool, Door, and Error pathways. God Almighty controlled the Chaos Sea and the uniquenesses of the Sun, Tyrant, White Tower, Hanged Man, and Visionary pathways. Due to the convergence characteristic inherent to the Creator, the Lord of Mysteries and God Almighty engaged in battle, ultimately perishing together. However, these two beings would not die completely. As long as someone became the new Lord of Mysteries or God Almighty, their will could be resurrected. In order to resurrect, both the Lord of Mysteries and God Almighty left behind contingency plans. God Almighty's remains formed the first blasphemy slate within the Chaos Sea. The Lord of Mysteries, on the other hand, sealed all the Sephiroth, aside from Sephira Castle and the Chaos Sea, onto the Western continent. This was to prevent anyone from deliberately avoiding their respective pathways to stop their resurrection. Finally, he grabbed the people on Earth at that time, pulled them into Sephira Castle, and hung them upon the castle's door of light, releasing them in suitable eras, seeking an opportunity for resurrection. The three individuals released so far are the Evernight Goddess, Emperor Roselle, and Klein. Because the Evernight Goddess and Emperor Roselle did not follow the Lord of Mysteries arrangements and pursue the divine pathways he controlled, this led to Clean's appearance. Only Clean embarked on a pathway corresponding to the Lord of Mysteries and had already become a Sequence 1 King of Angels. As the power of Earth's barrier weakens, the outer deities are about to break through and descend upon the planet. If there are no great old level deities to oppose them, Earth will face its apocalypse. Thus, the current situation is, the deities urgently require the birth of a new Lord of Mysteries to help them undo the seal on the Western continent and reclaim their corresponding Sephiroth in order to advance to the level of Great Old One and resist the outer deities. Therefore, the question if who would become the Lord of Mysteries became particularly crucial for these deities. If Amun were to become the Lord of Mysteries, he would help Adam gain control of the Chaos Sea Sephira, reclaim the uniquenesses of the Lord of Storms, the eternal blazing sun, and the God of Knowledge and Wisdom, and become a Great Old One. Thus, they firmly stood in Clean's camp. The Evernight Goddess, being from the same hometown as Clean, was also a staunch supporter of Klein. At this point, the deities were divided into two factions, and a grand-scale divine war was about to erupt. At the center of this vortex, Clean had no choice. If he only represented himself, giving up the status of the Lord of Mysteries wouldn't matter much. However, Amun could not be trusted. He was a capricious god acted arbitrarily. This god of deceit's believers were even all just himself. Clean couldn't imagine ever in around him one day wearing a crystal monocle. Along his journey, he had already shouldered the fates of too many people. Those who had shown him kindness helped him, and followed him were growing in number. If Clean gave up, it meant pushing them into danger. Therefore, Clean had no choice but to fight Ammon. There wasn't much time left for him. To advance as quickly as possible, Clean recited the Evernight Goddess's honorable name, praying for her help. The goddess agreed to help him complete the ritual. Consequently, Clean began bidding farewell to his family and friends, such as secretly attending his brother Benson's wedding and visiting Miss Justice Audrey Hall. After settling everything, he went to see the goddess again to start preparing for his advancement. The ritual to advance to the Fool required fooling a period of history or fate. The Snake of Mercury and the Evernight Goddess finally determined Clean's advancement plan to steal the fate of the half-fool, Antigonus, thereby fooling fate to complete the ritual. However, doing so meant Clean would have to bear the fate of Antigonus losing control. The Lord of Mysteries would further awaken within him, and the deities aligned with Ammon would make their move at this time. The advancement ritual would be extremely dangerous. To prevent accidents, Clean prepared a blank clone in advance. Once the battle turned unfavorable and he was about to fail, he would let the Lord of Mysteries awaken directly within his body. In order to securely steal Antigonus's fate, Clean helped the Evernight Goddess retrieve water from one of the Sephiroth, the River of Eternal Darkness. Subsequently, he borrowed the sealed artifact 05, the magic wishing lamp from Bernadette. With everything prepared, Cleen entered the Hornus's mountain range. The divine war was about to begin. The Evernight goddess used the water from the river of eternal darkness to conceal the Hornus's mountain range and put Antigonus into a deep slumber, allowing Cleen to steal Antigonus's fate without being interfered with by anyone. As the stealing was completed, Cleen, while madly suppressing the wills of Antigonus and the Lord of Mysteries, was exposed before everyone. Adam, who had merged with the true creator, used his visionary abilities to directly elevate his strength to the level of a half-great old one, single-handedly suppressing the Lord of Storms, the eternal blazing sun, and the God of knowledge and wisdom, who supported Cleen within their respective divine kingdoms. Then Aemon made his move, using the authority of Dor to completely seal the Grade 0 sealed artifacts of the major churches, preventing the deities from using them. Next, he threw the first blasphemy slate into the entrance of the abyss in the foggy sea to isolate the influence of the outer deities. At this moment, the Evernight goddess intervened, intercepting Aemon's true body, which intended to reach Cleen. Although his true body was held back by the Evernight goddess, countless Aemon avatars swarmed onto the battlefield. Cleen, currently at the critical moment of his advancement, could not act and could only rely on the genie to manipulate sealed artifact Zu-2, enacting laws to restrict Aemon. The two sides fell into a stalemate. Aemon began continuously releasing negative emotions, causing the wills of the Lord of Mysteries and Antigonus to awaken madly. Under Aemon's frantic interference, Cleen's plan to fool fate failed. Left with no alternative, Cleen used the blank clone he had prepared beforehand, transferring his main body's Beyonder characteristic to the clone, while his main body on the battlefield bore the brunt of Antigonus's will, and the awakening Lord of Mysteries' will. The consciousness of the Lord of Mysteries began to awaken within Cleen's main body. Although all the deities wished for the birth of the Lord of Mysteries, none desired it to be that ancient existence. Therefore, everyone had to temporarily join forces to fight against the gradually awakening Lord of Mysteries. The magic wishing lamp used sealed artifact Ozo 2 to write, "Resurrection of the dead is forbidden here." Cleen began fighting for control over Saphira Castle with the Lord of Mysteries. Adam activated a great prophecy. Finally, under the suppression of the gods, the Lord of Mysteries fell back into slumber. This was also the best time for Cleen to consume the Fool Potion in advance. However, at this moment, Cleen was disturbed by various factors, making it difficult for him to advance, and the consciousness of the Lord of Mysteries reawakened under the interference from all sides. At this point, the Evernight goddess made her move. The Evernight goddess took out the giant sword of the Twilight Giant, and at the perfect moment, directly killed Cleen, who was about to fail his advancement. The next moment, Cleen relied on the final resurrection chance of a miracle invoker and directly resurrected. The uniqueness of the Fool and the three Beyonder characteristics rapidly returned to Cleen's body. Simultaneously, the Evernight goddess concealed all the deities present, turning the tide single-handedly. A few seconds later, the Fool was born. Cleen finally became the Fool in the true sense. Aemon temporarily retreated, and the divine war finally came to an end. Although Cleen's side won this round, the will of the Lord of Mysteries had also further awakened within his body. Cleen returned to Saphira Castle and began trying his best to stabilize his own condition. However, just then, Aemon arrived again. Amon's door pathway and error pathway originally belonged to the authority of the Lord of Mysteries. Amon chose to directly release his own suppression of the Lord of Mysteries, gaining partial authority over Saphira Castle at the cost of becoming half-mad, and successfully entered Saphira Castle. The two began the final battle of the entire book here. In Cleen's currently extremely unstable state, it was difficult to resist Aemon. At this critical moment, Cleen noticed Amon's fatal weakness. Although Aemon was in a half-mad state, he still had an avatar left by Adam's side, with Adam helping to stabilize its condition. Thinking of this, Cleen looked at Aemon and said with a smile, "For me, rather than letting you become the Lord of Mysteries, it would be better to let the one from the past revive. Although you have always pursued excitement and are known for taking risks, fundamentally, you are very afraid of death. Since I have no way to defeat you, then the upcoming battle will be about whose body the Lord of Mysteries revives faster within. It's just that this battle has no winner. When the Lord of Mysteries fully awakens, we will die together. Come on, Aemon, shed your disguise of seeking excitement, and put your life on the betting table." Following that, Cleen completely released his suppression of the Lord of Mysteries. Seeing such a mad Cleen, Aemon backed down. The price was being caught off guard by Cleen and killed on the spot. This final battle ultimately concluded with Cleen's Pyrrhic victory. Finally, Aemon resurrected at the location of his avatar. Adam's emotionless voice sounded beside Aemon's ear. "For Cleen, there are things more important than life. As for you, apart from yourself, there is almost nothing worth caring too much about. When things develop to the point where life must be wagered, it means you have lost. Amun's expression flickered, but he quickly resumed his smile. This supervillain, who had brought immense pressure upon everyone, finally walked towards the cosmos and disappeared into the shadows. Although Klein won the gamble against Amun, the will of the Lord of Mysteries could no longer be suppressed. At this moment, the only thing he could do was to drag the Lord of Mysteries into slumber together with him, and then attempt to fuse with the Lord of Mysteries. Klein sat within Sephira Castle and held the Tarot gathering for the last time. Now, he no longer needed to pretend to be a great figure, because he was already the true fool. The world did not attend this gathering. A suppressive atmosphere filled the air. Klein told them that he would enter slumber. During his slumber, he entrusted all members of the Tarot Club to widely spread his name, and to disseminate the various deeds of the world as his blessed, recording them in the Church's holy scriptures. After arranging everything, he left behind a sentence: "When the world awakens, the fool returns." The Tarot Club members accepted this long-term commission. When the fool announced that this gathering was concluded, they stood up simultaneously and bowed solemnly towards the mottled long table. As everyone departed, Klein sat there quietly. On both sides of the mottled long table, the figures of the Tarot Club members materialized one by one: Miss Justice Audrey, the Hangman Alger, the Sun Derek, the Magician Fors, the Moon Emlyn, the Hermit Catlia, the Star Leoner Judgment Shio. But this time they were not real people, merely projections that were no longer blurry, all revealing the appearances Klein remembered. After an unknown amount of time, Klein stood up and walked towards the depths of the gray fog space. Klein lowered his head, looking at the magic mirror roads in his hand, and walked into the midst of the strange door of light. His figure gradually dissipated. The fool thus entered slumber. Here ends the full story of Lord of Mysteries. Praise the Fool.